Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Today we're joined by Chris Haddow, sales leader of Planhat. How are you?
Good, Hitesh. Thank you very much. How are you?
Very good. It's great to have you here. We always like to start with a little bit of a backstory so our listeners understand who Chris is and how you've got to where you are. So the floor's yours. Wow
Sure.
us with your career to date.
Yeah. Wow. Hopefully not underwhelm. So I actually started in recruitment. So I worked through, well, prior to that, I was a football coach.
Oh,
And
nice.
then moved, somehow found myself in recruitment. Worked through the various iterations of that from agency, RPO, then in-house, at a couple of different software companies. And I was using LinkedIn on a daily basis to find candidates. And a wonderful guy that I think you probably know of, Ollie Sharp, was at LinkedIn at the time. He was a recruiter at the time. He was trying to place people with me. He then joined LinkedIn and he asked me to speak at a couple of events. I did that, felt like I could sell that stuff. And so then joined LinkedIn in 2010. I was there for 5 years, did new business, then account management or relationship management, and then moved into sales leadership there. Had a wonderful time, sold a lot of stuff. I was a top performer there without wanting to blow my own trumpet too much. And then got headhunted into a company called Double Dutch. Double Dutch is an event tech company. They powered like the big conferences that Planhat that LinkedIn had both internally and externally. I joined to look after the largest accounts that they had. Um, the company restructured and I got elevated into leading the European sales function, both new and existing business. We did well, steadied the ship, started pound for pound up punching the US team. I then was asked to lead the global revenue team. I'd moved to Amsterdam at this point, so I was living in the Netherlands. Me and my family lived in the Netherlands
Nice.
for 3 years. And then led the global team from Amsterdam. It's a US HQ company. And then following on from that, there was an acquisition. So Cvent bought out Double Dutch, big competitive acquisition. Came back to the UK, short stint at a data visualization company. Wasn't quite the right fit, and then joined a company called Swapcard just as the pandemic hit, and the world of event tech went kind of nuts.
Mm,
Happened, and Swapcard focuses on large exhibitions. So that whole world, that whole business sort of like was flipped upside down. And so they pivoted very well. I've been speaking with Baptiste, who's the CEO, for a while, and joined as head of sales. Took on a team of 10, re-architected the team, the price book, all of that stuff, and then worked through that through the pandemic to reconstruct the team. And we went on this crazy journey over 2.5 years where we took the revenue from 2019, it was 2.5 million. And when I left, it was 26 million.
wow. Nice.
Team
Big
grew
growth.
through that. Yeah. So kind of crazy. There was obviously a big mix of inbound and then shifting to an outbound motion there that was difficult, but kind of fun to navigate. And then after 2.5 years there, I was tired. I didn't quite have hair when I joined. If I had done it, all would have gone. Um, but then I was approached by a headhunter about a company called Planhat. Planhat is a customer data platform, so manages all your customer success processes and renewal programs. And joined Planhat about a year and a half ago to lead the UK and Ireland new business sales function.
Nice. There
Impressive.
you go. An eventful career to date. My only question to you is, do you miss coaching football?
Yes, yeah. My son's 15 and he's a decent player. He won a cup final at the weekend as well.
Lovely.
Yeah, and every now like I'll run the line or I'll get involved in coaching. I just want a chance to kick the ball around again. But I'm too competitive. I can't coach him. I'm too competitive, too emotionally invested. Maybe. Yeah, I do miss it. But there's lots of
What
good things you take from football coaching into. It's a bit cliche, right? Into B2B
The
sales,
synergies. Yeah.
teams. Yeah, there's lots of synergies. Yeah.
Well, what are they? So Hits was on a podcast. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, Kevin Thiel,
Yeah.
and one of the questions was the similarity or like the passover between sports and sales. Like
Mm.
what? Because I agree with you. Like I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. Like one is more cerebral, and obviously the other one is more physical. But like, where do you see the overlap between sports and sales?
Yeah, well, to summarize it, I'd probably say like understanding and delivering to the individual objective and goal, but creating a collective mindset around that and bringing a team cohesion. Like you're greater than the sum of your parts, right, as a team. And
Mm.
so I think actually getting to the heart of the why for the individual, what motivates them, what they're trying to achieve, what the next step is, even. Unless you're playing for elite level football, you're looking to build a career. And so understanding where the individual wants to go, what they're trying to achieve, and all that stuff, but then mapping that into the overarching team objective.
Mm.
Part of that, your another sort of similarity is one person's strengths could be another person's weaknesses, and in a team environment, you cover one up, you learn from one another, and such as well. So there's a whole everyone's got to play their part in the team. Sometimes that means doing the thing that you don't really want to do, but you do it for the good of the team, and then eventually you get your shot to play striker or something.
Yeah, I know. Before we hit the record button, you mentioned one of the things you were really passionate about is building teams as well. So it kind of speaks to that as well. Where is that where the passion originally stems from your football coaching days?
Yeah, I used to before I coached, I played, and I always felt like I put the team first.
Yeah.
So the yeah, I think that 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 team sports, that sense of shared purpose, is a very powerful thing.
Mm.
People feel connected to something. They want to feel part of a group of people that are moving towards something. And if you can get everyone pushing in the same direction by aligning their individual objectives to that direction, then you can come out with something pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I know obviously you've built a few teams in your time as well, in the business sense of things as well. What are some of the biggest challenges that you think people face when trying to put together a cohesive team who are going in that same direction? Because it's quite easy to say, like, let's get everyone, kumbaya and going in the same direction to achieve the same goals. But actually identifying the right people to bring into the business, instilling the right culture within the group or within the team, all of these things can be quite challenging. I know I've struggled at times to do it, and I'm sure Mick has as well. Speak a little bit about the challenges that you see with this, or that you feel are the most common challenges people face with this, and how you overcome them.
Yeah. So if I draw another parallel with sports as well. So when you think about, I always go to football, but
Mhm.
when you think of a football manager joining a new club, they get rid of players and they bring players in. And I think it kind of has to happen that way. You always want to you got to see what you've got and who fits. But there has to be alignment. There has to be a value alignment. There has to be a skill set alignment. Like, are you fit for purpose? Can you do the job? Or am I even able to fill those gaps
Mm.
for you as well? And so I think that there's always some upfront conversations. I have like a leadership framework in my mind that I always apply when I go to a new company, and sort of like continually iterate on this. Is first off to engage. So who are you? What motivates you? It's a discovery conversation, right?
Yeah.
What things are you good at? What do you need to work on? Where are you trying to get to? Why are you trying to get there? To really understand the person. Um,
Mm.
it's then the uh, enable. So enable is like, can we fill the gaps that you have? Can we build on your strengths and then cover up the weaknesses, or development areas? Sorry, and get you to a place where you have everything that you need to go ahead and execute. Um, and then the final thing is to empower. So like you've got the tools, you've got the utility belt, like go use them the way that you see fit. I'll guide and steer and all that stuff, but it's got to come from you.
Mm.
like I've not met many people. Some people need micromanaging. What they need is strong guidance. They don't need micromanaging, but I've never met someone that truly enjoys that, like, constant on your shoulder.
No.
What do you need? All that stuff. So I think you avoid that situation if you've got to the heart of the matter, like what motivates you, what drives you. Am I able to, like, press that hot button for you that's going to make you do the thing that you don't want to do, but you know is a part of the core activity set that you have to get through on a day-to-day basis. And so by going through those 3 E's, I feel that on that journey, you figure out very clearly if, one, you've got someone that's prepared to go on that journey with you, and if your value set aligns, and if ultimately the motivations actually can drive towards a common goal. And if that isn't there, then you have to have a difficult conversation about the fact that maybe someone's going to be more successful in a different environment, because being upfront, like, this is where we're going, and this is how I believe we're going to get there.
Yeah.
I've got a question on this, because I think in sports people put themselves there, and it's fairly optional, right? You don't have to do your sport as long as you're not a professional player and so on and so forth. Like, you're kind of adding something extra to the table. But with work, I feel it's a little bit different. Like, there are a couple of stats out there at the moment. Like, the average tenure of a salesperson is, I think, 18 months or so, like an IC, and the average ramp-up time is 10 to 12 months. So a lot of turnover, a lot of churn, and really hard to actually get to capacity in terms of what you're able to do. So how do you balance dealing with, okay, I need to create the best team, the best performing team, versus, okay, these people will do for a while. Like, I can accept a little bit of in between.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to get right. I've got it right and got it wrong at times as well. And I think the quicker you can get to that why, and have a very open, and it's very difficult to have a very open and direct conversation with someone that you just met about their career. And you're absolutely right, Mick, because it's work at the end of the day. It's called fun if we all wanted to do it all of this all day long. And so actually getting to that point of trust really quickly is very hard. But I think you can actually do that by being very open and vulnerable in yourself, and explaining why these things are important. With that, it sets the permissions, it sets the boundaries for the team that you're working with to do the same. It also sets the expectation that they were to do the same if you've shared authentically. And then from that, it's a case of, look, where do you want to go? And a lot of times these conversations say, well, if I'm an SDR, I want to be an AE. It's like, okay, why? Well, that's what you do. And then you can dig into it and actually understand that, no, actually they want to be in sales ops. Or actually in account management. It can go a variety of different paths. It's not a linear thing. Maybe it was a few years back, but it's become more convoluted, the paths that people can take, and very much more open. So I think that that open conversation up front allows you to understand the runway that you have, and it also allows you to set the expectations on both sides. Like, you want to become an AE, these are the things that you need to do to get there. And if at a certain point in the future, a year, 2 years down the line, you've done those things, like, we'll put you on that track. And if there isn't space to do that, because sometimes businesses won't have the space to do so, you then, as the leader, are responsible for making sure that person's ready for their next step outside the business. And there's a book by Reid Hoffman, who's one of the founders of LinkedIn, called The Alliance. And it talks about that relationship, and it's part of the sort of guiding principles that I have as a leader, is like making sure that there's this shared agreement and understanding that we're on this path together, but at a certain point in time, it diverges. And that's okay. As long as we know what the conditions are, that is, we're going to do it. We're going to do it in the right way.
Nice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, especially the last point, because you can't always move people into the position they want, because it would be a waste, right? If you move an SDR into an AE position, but actually it means there's going to be no opportunities for the AE to work, then it doesn't make any sense. And so the ability to have them ready for that next step, even if it's outside of the company, does sit with their manager. So I absolutely agree with that. I want to take the conversation in a slightly different direction now as well. I think one of the other things that we've spoken about as well was you've kind of sat on both sides of the fence. So you've had overall revenue responsibility across a company, that then more recently, I believe you've been focused on the new logo side of things as well. It would be interesting to hear your perspective pre moving from all encompassing all revenue to new logo versus now, in terms of how, you know, the two sides should be working together and where you see the gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think earlier in my career, I probably would have been a little more selfish or cynical about this and said, if I'm on the new business side, I'm going to do what it takes to get things done. And whatever happens down the line, happens down the line. That's not how you build a business. At the same time, so at the same time, there's a point, there's your typical ICP that if you have the right data, you understand who they are, how they behave, what they're going to do later, that they're going to stay with you, they're going to grow, you're going to recognize increasing revenue from them over time. That's nirvana. At the same time, you also have to experiment. If you're going to expand your TAM, you have to experiment in these edge use cases. And some you're going to get right, and it's going to open things up. Some you're going to get wrong, and they're going to churn. And that's the way it goes. And so I think that the way that I operate that now, or have operated that now with Planhat, first off, another Chris at Planhat, Chris Register, he's our chief customer officer. He has the power of veto. This is a bad fit customer. It's going to churn. All the lights are red. Let's just not do it because they're going to drain resources and kill us. Now, again, earlier in my career, I would have probably fought tooth and nail just to say that that's that. But having owned that side of things as well, I understand.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that there has to be a 10-15% wiggle room on fit to then try those edge cases to bring them in. But really, the data should tell you who the customers are that you should bring in, how they behave, how you're going to actually recognize revenue and value from them over time. Yeah. Because while you sit on the new business side, you're still on the business side. You're building a business. You're not just acquiring stuff and then chucking it over the fence and seeing what happens. It's about longevity and building a business longer term. And that perspective to your question, Hitesh, comes from owning both sides of the equation. And so anything that you acquire, you've got to keep. And so I know that if and there's growth multiples on, or expansion targets on existing customers as well. As we look to grow NRR over time, you're looking to ask the same customers to spend more, whether they've got the same product with the typical annual increase, or by finding more opportunity within them. And the only way that you do that is by delivering them value as quick as possible when you bring them on board.
I think part of that is around building the alignment between both sides of the fence as well. How do you go about doing that? Because I've been in scenarios where it has been, you know, I've had people in my team who want to sign anything. Well, not this team now, because Jointflows, you know, we're very founder-led, so we try to make sure we're doing it right. But I've had people previously in my team who just want to sign. It doesn't matter. Let's just sign them. Let's get them over. And how is it that you instill the correct values within a sales organization and their counterparts on the other side to work together?
Yeah, I think, well, take it all the way back. It does go to sort of cultural or value alignment that you would identify through the interview process. That sense of integrity, where do you draw the line, all of that stuff you can ask. That was the way that you would ask it on the new business side. On the account management or customer success side is like, look, what was maybe not the right way of doing it, but what's your tolerance for some variation from the norm? because we're going to have to
Mm.
figure out ourselves, especially depending on the stage of the business, we're going to have to deal with some edge cases here, and you're going to have to work through that. And so understanding like the personality traits of each that ultimately are going to lead to a cohesive relationship that you're going to build longer term.
Yeah.
You can design processes, winning by design, have the beautiful bow tie where you're measuring impact or identifying impact through the discovery and sales phase, and then first to point impact through the post-sale phase. It's the continuation of the SPICE framework that they design, which I really like. It's going to fit some organizations and maybe not others. You just need to tweak it a little bit to squeeze it into your company. All those, you can do all those things, design processes, make sure that there's handover calls booked or forms filled out, whatever it may be. I think the biggest thing that makes it happen is alignment of comp plans. Comp plans drive behavior at end of the day. And so if there's accountability or reward on one way or the other, both for the CSM or the AM that's managing the renewal, and then the new business person to make sure that they've brought the right customer on and they get a kicker on it, or they get a kick up the backside if it doesn't renew, that's gonna drive the behaviors that you want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost always we go back to commission plans and alignment between departments. It's very interesting because it's really hard to get it right.
Yeah.
I think there's always an element of someone's compensation plan which is not completely in line with someone else in the cycle. Like, I've got a question for you, Chris, because you're from a Planhat's viewpoint, you're a little bit in a unique position where you're selling a post-sale software, but you've got a new logo. It's like a clash of departments. Like, you've got your new logo team selling into post-sales stakeholders. How do you teach that? Because I think it requires a certain open-mindedness to then be aligned to someone else that's, outside of your cycle.
Yeah. I think in any whether it's this industry or any other, you need to understand the challenges of the person that you're selling to. And if you've only ever done new business, that's going to be something that you've got to learn. You have BDRs, AEs within Planhat that have only focused on the new business side. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen to help them understand, like, these are the mechanics of a business. This is how you build a SaaS business. This is what NRR is. This is what churn means. All of that context needs to be absorbed by the person that's ultimately running the sell, to then truly understand the world of the person that you're selling to. Until you've done it, you're not going to fully do so. But one of the things that we did was, I love a whiteboard. If you give me a whiteboard and I get to draw on it, that's my happy place in front of a room of too many people. But like that's where I think you can start to tell stories of certainly the experiences that I had running a book of business, like at LinkedIn, managing some of the largest logos that we had in the UK, and how I would account map and plan and where they sit and everything like that. And then I draw that on a whiteboard, and then I can then show what that looks like in Planhat, and how that's done in a couple of clicks, rather than me fumbling around a PowerPoint slide on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
The other side is making sure that not just that they have stories to tell, but also that they have a very, very clear capability to listen and understand. Same with any sales role, right? You have to understand, you have to listen to what the person's telling you, and not be afraid to ask what would seem a silly question.
Yeah.
Like, to get true understanding of it rather than just surface level stuff.
Yeah. I love a bit of active listening.
Yeah.
People don't do enough of it. Absolutely. One of the other things we spoke about as well was the concept of remote working versus office working as well. We all know when the pandemic hit, there was a big shift. And everybody went fully remote. And then as time has progressed, we've seen some companies to different levels have either gone all the way back in or 1 day a week, 2 week away, two days a week, hybrid, and so forth and so forth. I know different companies also have different objectives at different times based on their growth as well, so have different requirements. What's your view on this? What's the right approach to take from a company viewpoint?
Yeah. It's as we were talking about before, it's a little fresh for me as well, because I just had a conversation with the leadership at Planhat, and actually the move there is to move commercial sales roles in office all the time. And that unfortunately doesn't fit me. I'm based in the Midlands. I can do a couple of days a week in London, but I got a family that I need to be around. So I'm actually going to be parting ways with Planhat over the course of the coming weeks, which is a shame, because I think it's a wonderful product, wonderful people, and they're going to be on a hell of a journey. So I'd encourage everyone else to have a look at them if you need something to run your post-sale processes. And I understand the reason why they need to move in office. So what we've actually done there is sort of established a BDR function that didn't really exist before, and we found, I say, the formula. It's a constant thing, right? You're always revamping, renewing, and making sure that pipeline build is fit for purpose, and you can never have enough. But with that shift in the commercial organization, they need leadership that's going to be present and around them 100% of the time, because relatively early career professionals, the belief is that more structure, more guidance, the ability to learn directly from people who sat next to one another, that's the thing that they need right now. And so that's a company decision that makes sense for Planhat at this point in time. In 3-4 years, maybe it's different. Exactly as you said, Hitesh, like in my mind, whether it's remote or in office, you see very polarized opinions on LinkedIn. I don't think it's right or wrong one way or another. It's about what's right for that company, or indeed that individual at that point in time in their career, and the evolution of that business. And so it's a perpetually moving thing. Don't get me wrong, I think a stance and a viewpoint and a consistency is important, but that may have to change at certain points in time through the company. And my own personal view is, my story at Swapcard is in the middle of the pandemic. It was 2.5 years. We grew from 2.5 to $26 million ARR, or euro, sorry, because it's French HQ. That was wholly remote. Everything was remote. I hired 40 odd people, all remote. Some worked, some didn't, but that's the same of meeting people in person. Don't get me wrong, I'd prefer to do it in person. I'd prefer to have contact time. But I know that it is possible, albeit in enforced circumstances. I think there's a variety of different ways, and that worked for that company at that time, much like you look at deal or remote. They kind of have to do that as part of their overarching value proposition, thing that they believe in. So I think it's all got to be fit for where you are as a company and the stance that you're taking, but that doesn't mean to say it can't shift shape every now and then to suit market conditions or where you are as a company, or indeed the individual. I've worked with people that they got on with the remote thing, but actually they craved that connection. And it is important, whether that's a remote company that's coming together on a quarterly basis, or you're able to go to a shared working space just to be around other humans once or twice a week. You've got to find that rhythm that works for you and the environment that allows you to do your best work.
I don't think I could be 100% remote. I'd have to have at least a couple of days, 1 or 2 days.
It's hard. I through that period of Swapcard, I'd go to like cafe and work there just to be around people, or a shared working space there, or someone or a colleague that lived maybe an hour away. Like you drive up and you meet together and you work. I'm with you there, Hitesh. I think it's really important to feel connected to something.
Yeah, as I'd just be talking to the walls. Nobody wants
Yeah,
that.
Mm.
yeah,
I don't know. It's funny because I've never been as productive as I am today, and we are almost fully remote. So we do, I don't know, maybe once a week, once every other week in London, outside of business meetings we've got there. So, and I feel like I figure I work longer hours because I don't spend 3 hours commuting. So like I'm actually monetizing the commute. I'm more focused. I've got more quality time as well because I can go and eat with my 2-year-old at lunch. I can create connections I would never have created without that. Um, and I feel like it has no impact whatsoever on the deliverables. Right? I understand it shouldn't be fully remote because I feel like you kind of have to see people and meet people to create a little bit of cohesion that goes beyond the screen. But I'm always surprised when I hear that. And my whole company went through that as well. Okay, pandemic is over, everybody back in the office, and people had moved. That in the US, they moved
yeah.
in a different well, it's not countries,
A different state.
a different state. And you're like, well, I'm still performing. I'm still top performer. Like, why does that matter? And actually, when you question the leadership, and in one of these cases, it was just fancying more control over people. Well, if they're in the office, I know they're working, and I want everybody in the office so I can see them working. Well, actually, I don't think that's a good message to send. So, yeah, I've got a bit of a different opinion on this, but it's interesting because I think a lot of businesses are asking this question at the moment. It's like, oh, should we go full office? Should we do a hybrid? Should we do full remote? Like, what's the right in between? All
Yeah, I
I
think
right.
couldn't go. I couldn't go full office as well, Mick. Just so we're secure in how we're growing our company.
I'll leave you guys to it. I think
We've go on, Chris. Sorry.
with these broader teams as well, it's for you, Mick, it sounds like you've got the right balance. You can manage your life the way that you want, and some people thrive in that. Hitesh, for you, it seems like you want that social connection, like the ability to bounce ideas off or be around surrounded by energy. And so it's a stage of life, a circumstance thing as well. I always go back to that team ethos as well, because it's not just about the individual, it's about what the team
Mm.
do. And so again, when I was at LinkedIn, I was kind of hybrid. You're out seeing clients all the time anyway, so maybe that was the first version of hybrid, I don't know. And so, but when you go into the office, it's not just about you being there so someone control you and see you and make sure that you're working. It's about what you can bring to the rest of the team.
Yeah.
um part of that group that's being built there. So there's so many different ways to look at that whole debate. I think it's fascinating, and I see it all kicking off on
Mm.
LinkedIn. I don't know, every now and then I feel like chucking a comment in there, but I tend to sit on the fence with this a little bit because I don't think there's a right or wrong either way.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we are almost out of time, Chris. So we do have a wrap-up question. And the wrap-up question is, through your whole career to date, what is your best memory and why?
Oh, best memory.
We get this expression a lot,
That's
so don't worry.
so difficult. I'm gonna throw a few out there.
Yeah, go for it.
One of my proudest, best memories was like, or highlights reel. Let's do that. I remember closing, I think it was 50-60% of my book of business renewals on the, I think it was New Year's Eve. Um, uh, Surrounded by my colleagues from LinkedIn. And I knew these deals were coming in. We're actually in the pub.
Yeah.
These contracts were coming in, and that took me to club and all that good stuff. But it was like I was sat there very confident. I felt like Man City about to win the title, right? Knowing that it was going to kind of happen. So that was one. Another one was when I first met a guy called Mike Matos. He was my boss at Double Dutch. He and I we clicked, like immediate click. It worked very well, and so we're still friends today, as we are with a guy called Ian Bazar, a guy called Brandon, and we all worked out of Amsterdam to various degrees as well. And so it's a very tight-knit group that was still in touch. Another highlight, I'm going to go on, sorry.
Go for it.
Another highlight, I remember Lawrence at Double Dutch, who was the CEO at the time. We went for breakfast. Forget the area of San Francisco it was in, but that's when he asked me to run the global revenue organization at Double Dutch. That was a very
amazing
moment. That was very cool.
Nice.
Final two was when I hired my best mate at Swapcard, a guy called Mark. He joined me. He's still at Swapcard running the channel sales program there. That was like I got to work with him for a couple of years, which was amazing. And then finally was actually meeting Baptiste, the CEO of Swapcard, in person for the first time after working with him for a year and a half. And so finally that connection that we were just talking about, that sort of coming to life, that was pretty special too.
Wow.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Some great memories there. Appreciate you sharing that. Well, awesome. I think that's everything for today, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.